there, friendos. Sandeep here, and we are going to talk about a channel favorite stock in CRISPR. So let's get started. Welcome back, my friendos. Today we're driving into CRISPR, and investing in CRISPR might sound like we're investing into a dream. And that dream is almost becoming a reality because the major scoop about its recent earnings are its earnings per share went positive. But that doesn't really tell the whole story. We drive into the fundamentals and see what's going on. The reason why the EPS went positive is because of a thing called revenue recognition. And that's the interesting part. A while ago, Vertex gave CRISPR a big lump sum of money, about $913 million. And what CRISPR does is it recognizes this slowly over time, not all at once, but throughout the years. It's recognized about 370 million of that so far. And in this past year, about 1.2 million in this year alone. It can almost manipulate its EPS that way. And depending on how much it recognizes, it can really change how profitable the company is. But that doesn't tell the whole story. The company, in my opinion, is becoming much more efficient. It's dropping things like its general and administrative costs by 25.6%. And the company has a big upside in terms of its cash position. Part of that is because it secured a sweet 32.7 million from share offerings in this year alone, which added a very healthy injection to its cash reserves. However, the real story about CRISPR is its pipeline. I'm not the only person who's bullish. A lot of the insiders are exercising their juicy discounts on their stock buying plans, including Kukanari Samarath, who's been picking up and just scooping up, snagging these shares at deep discounts below market price, below $80. But why am I feeling so bullish on CRISPR Therapeutics? So, first of all, the company is kind of an infant company right now. And we did a bunch of videos on the channel before. One video was on Gilead. And one thing I remember about Gilead is the company was unprofitable for years until it's got a lot of these approvals on these drugs, until these drugs got greenlit. And that brought in a massive layer of optimism and a massive injection of revenue, which turned it into the giant it is today. I believe as soon as CRISPR starts getting that steady income, steady revenue, it could echo a lot of the big players like Gilead. Another reason why I'm bullish is AI. We did a video on NVIDIA just a very short while ago and found it was a game changer for biotech especially. I've been listening to a lot of analysts speak. I've been reading a lot, and biotech has been at the forefront of AI integration. We talked about NVIDIA's BioNeMo. Raj did a very good video on it, by the way. And the way it's able to pump out these AI models for biotech companies. And that could be really big for a company that really needs to lower some of the expenses and increase its revenue. It can make the company CRISPR even more efficient than it already is. Thinking so about what's going on with the company, CRISPR has a very small market cap, in my opinion, of 6.72 billion. And upon approval of its sickle cell disease, beta thalassemia, its drug treatment, I did a little bit of the math, and considering that, it could be a really big game changer and bring in almost $1 trillion of revenue on the upper end. But rather than just me saying that, why don't I go ahead and show you? So what I've done here is I took a look at the companies where CRISPR has approval for their sickle cell therapy in the United States, in European Unions, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia, and just added up some of the numbers of all the people suffering. And this number right here in Saudi Arabia, wow, a lot of people are really suffering from sickle cell disease in this country, which is eye-opening. So the situation with Vertex, CRISPR's main partner, and CRISPR is they split everything 60-40. 60% going to Vertex and 40% going to CRISPR. That includes revenue and costs, which is a good thing because right now, CRISPR is incurring a lot of costs. 60% of that, Vertex takes care of, but 60% of the upside, Vertex gets. This therapy that has been approved costs about 2.2 million. So I just did a little bit of math, and this is the upper end. We like to be optimistic about the upper end, but we don't always get the upper end. So doing a little bit of math, how much it'll cost, how many people might take it, and the 40% share that'll go to CRISPR, CRISPR's looking at almost $1 trillion in revenue from this therapy alone. And that is huge, in my opinion. We like to think of the upside and consider how it could go and how big it could go. On a $6.2 billion market cap, thinking of revenues like that can really, really change how it is, how it's doing. Though we have another reason why I am bullish on the company is, in addition to its recent approval, in addition to that great partnership with Vertex, is healthy financials. The company has 2.29 billion, after doing a little bit of the math, I did the math for you, in cash reserves and $0 in debt, which is huge. Not every genomics company can think of that, can say that. The company has very well capitalized, and it has a cash run rate, considering its current cash burn rate, of around 4 years, which is very, very good from a fundamental perspective. Of the very high-risk genomic industry, CRISPR is one of the better plays for that. However, this doesn't just come with upsides. There are some very real risks and very real concerns for CRISPR. And one of those are in the critical areas of cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. Although it does have a very real product and a very real cure, which has proven to be positive, we have to look at the pipeline and the timing of these. A lot of, considering the pipeline, a lot of the approvals, a lot of the drugs coming out from the pipeline are 3 to 5 years away. We're looking at 2027. And a lot of this revenue might not be recognized until that point. CRISPR does have a lot of cash, but if these were to get delayed, if some of these drugs were to not be approved, if we were to have to wait even longer, that could really be a downside risk to the stock. And that's something to consider. And that's something to really pay attention to. But if we're talking about the stock itself, a lot of, and Raj did a very good video on this, a lot of the upside in recent times in stock appreciation might be due to a short squeeze. CRISPR does have, I've seen, about 21% short interest. And insiders do have to cover, shorts do have to cover, and a lot of that covering might have pumped up the stock. So a lot of the upside might have been influenced by this, and we could see a reversion to the mean. Another thing to consider is 80% of the company right now are held by insiders. The biggest insider being ARK Invest, which holds over 10%, and other investors like Capital Institution Investors, T. Rowe Price, BlackRock, Fidelity, State Street. These are the big players that hold a significant portion of the stock of the company. So if these insiders were to become bearish, that could bring the stock down quite a bit because of the concentration into just a few companies. Especially for a small cap stock, that's something to really pay attention to what the insiders are doing. A headwind, a downside, a risk that I don't think a lot of people are considering is CRISPR is a Swiss company. And because it's not an American company, it can't be put into a lot of the indexes and a lot of ETFs, a lot of things like the Russell 2000, which at one point competitors like NTLA, Intelia was a part of that. But because it's not an American company, it is unable to be put into many of those very, very institutional heavy plays into vehicles. Something to consider with a very high risk company is the range. And I went through the 10K report and found that its market value, what CRISPR says, its market value can be anywhere between 3.5 billion, which is about half of where it is now. And that's something to consider where the floor might be. About half of its current position, close to like maybe $40 stock price at its current shares, and 30 billion, which is huge range, quite a significant range. And that could be because of that massive range. A lot of institutional investors might not like this big swing in price, this big standard deviation going up and down, which can be a deterrent for a lot of people, but also an upside when it starts to normalize. So, in conclusion, CRISPR is not your run of the mill stock. It's more of a dream. It's a potential play, and the widespread estimates can be really nerve-wracking. So really tread carefully when we're talking about this. However, I am going to just share a few of the little fun little summaries we got over here. So this was my bullish case for CRISPR and my risk factors for CRISPR. And what I've done here is thinking about how far we could go. We could go a little around 4 years, maybe a little less on its current cash runway. This is not considering further injections and further support from Vertex. This is just by its current cash position, considering its current burn rate, which is not too bad considering a high-risk industry. Before we go ahead, I'd like to bring in this fun little expected, what we could think about what the growth is happening. CRISPR trading at about $83 currently right now. And I've used the 2025 estimate because in 2025, and we're looking really far ahead over here. And that's what we got to do for genomics plays. In 2025, we expect a big increase in price to earnings growth. If we were to consider its current EPS rate and its new growth rate, thinking a couple years ahead, its PEG ratio, price to earnings growth, is almost positive. That's a really big positive. Thinking it could go positive price to earnings growth, wow, I'm pretty happy about that. But what do you all think? Do you think this is worth the risk? Do you think CRISPR in a very high risk industry is one of the better plays? In my opinion, it is, considering some of those negatives. But what do you think of CRISPR? And what do you think of this new format? I listened to your feedback and try to make it much more to the point, a lot more condensed. Do you like this, or do you want me to throw out some more numbers and so on? What would you like to hear next? I'd like to hear from you. Give me your feedback. Thank you for the opportunity. And until next time, everybody, stay based, and we'll catch you on the next one.